Welcome to Civil Services Main 2014 Mock 6 analysis. Now let's take question number 1. After being held credible elections in Fiji, it has rejoined Commonwealth membership. Briefly discuss recent political developments in Fiji and their impact on Indian diaspora. After 8 years, Fiji returned to Commonwealth membership following the decision by the Commonwealth Ministerial Action Group that credible elections held brought to the government a political party supported by the majority of the people at the ballot box. So over there, the Fiji population comprises the majority indigenous Fijians community, a large minority of people of Indian origin and people of European descent, and other minorities forming the rest of the population is residing there. The majority of Fiji citizens with Indian ancestry are the fourth generation descendants of Indian workers who were taken to Fiji Islands under the infamous indenture system to work on the sugarcane plantation in the late 19th and early 20th century. So, keeping this in mind, let us discuss the answer which is given over here. Recently, Fiji witnessed return of democratic government after a long military rule. This election for the first time saw full voting rights for the age of 18. This is very important for Indian diaspora because Indo-Fijian population accounts for about 43% of population of Fiji. These Indians migrated as laborers for sugar plantation during 19th and 20th century, and when military took government in its own hands, and then Indians were discriminated and denied several rights. Resultantly, almost one third of them migrated to other countries. Those who were not able to migrate remained there and were forced to bear the brunt of discrimination. Thus, return of democracy brings a huge relief uh, to them, which will restore basic human rights such as judicial rights, justice, liberty, educational and health rights, and political representation. This development is highly important and should be supported by Indian government actively through financial and moral support to the democratic government. Efforts should be made so that military do not again assert power and take rule in its own hand. Now let us discuss question number 2. If Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme is implemented only in tribal and backward districts, what will be its likely implications? Critically analyze. The government is planning to restrict Manrega to the poor parts of the country, while it has been focusing on implementing the scheme in 2,500 backward blocks under its intensive participatory planning exercise. These blocks have been identified based on percentage of population below poverty line as per the Planning Commission estimates of 2013, and a backwardness index prepared by the Planning Commission using the 2011 census data that uses 5 parameters, that is percentage of household primarily dependent on agriculture, female literacy rate, households without access to electricity, households without access to drinking water and sanitation within the premises, and households without access to banking facilities. So, to reduce the scope of the Manrega, it is now proposed to be implemented only in tribal and backward districts, estimated at around 200 out of country's 675 districts. In other words, the scope of schemes coverage will come down by almost one third. So let us see the implications of it, and let's discuss the answer. Uh, Manrega, which is an employment guarantee scheme by Government of India and is a step towards introducing right to work, enshrined in the directive principles of state policy of our constitution. Its implementation only in tribal and backward districts will have the following implications. It will align with the vision of Manrega to provide livelihood security to the poor and vulnerable. It will reduce the subsidy burden as number of districts will be scaled down to 200 from 675 and help meet the FD targets, that is financial burden of states will be reduced, then it will get a greater share from states that were neutralized due to homogenization effect of universal policy. But the assumption that the poor people and tribal are zonally distributed is not a practical approach. Livelihood security of poor and tribes in left out district will be jeopardized. That is and asset creation, which is a vital determinant of sustainable development, will be crippled. It will promote urban migration, creating burden on already stressed system, leading to urban decay. Then it may generate streams of rural to rural migration. Now let's discuss question number 3. There are number of programs from the government directed against the malnutrition among children, but it still persists in India. Discuss the reasons of persistence of malnutrition in Indian children. Well, children in developing countries are born only slightly below the international reference standard for height and weight, but quickly fall behind in the first 24 months of life. Most often, who are stunted at 2 years of age continue to lag behind nutritionally at later ages. That is, it cannot be remedied at later stage in life. Childhood malnutrition casts a long shadow on individual outcomes well into adulthood. Periods of malnourishment in the first 2 to 3 years lead to poorer cognition and poorer adult economic outcomes, and thus nutritional shocks tend to persist forever. So, keeping this view in mind, let us discuss the answer. Malnutrition is one of the malaise of society despite stunning performance of Indian economy and number of policies announced by the government. The reasons are lack of sanitation facilities, non-availability of clean drinking water, and unawareness about children's nutritional requirements. And the other reasons are poverty is the biggest curse that restricts the availability and access of good food, causing malnutrition. Lack of nutrition knowledge creates unbalanced nutrient intake, resulting in poor health of children. Discrimination of girl child in feeding creates an acute malnutrition among the girl children. The malnourished mother gives birth to a malnourished child and the cycle perpetuates. Government food security policies have high degree of exclusion errors, leaving poorer out of security net. Then under inorganic agriculture, the bioavailability of nutrients has degraded to a great extent. India need to take holistic approach covering economical, sociological, technological and political efforts to help India meet the first and foremost goal of reduction in poverty and hunger. Question number 4. A large number of under trial prisoners in India are deprived of their fundamental right to liberty, and only provisions of criminal procedure code are not enough to provide them justice. Examine. Well, in the Indian constitution, there is no specific guarantee of prisoners' rights, but there are certain rights given under Part 3 of the constitution which are available to the prisoners, because a prisoner remains a person in the prison. So, a prisoner is a person who is deprived of his personal liberty due to the conviction of a crime, and imprisonment makes the prisoner repent about his past conduct. The judiciary protects the rights of prisoners and recognizes their rights. They are protected from torture and solitary confinement because there are certain statuses in the constitution which provides that certain rights of prisoners are enforced, such as number 1, Prisoners Act 1900, Prisoners Act 1955, Prisoners Act 1894, etc. And according to Universal Declaration of Human Rights, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity as well as the rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. So, keeping these things in mind, Let us discuss the answer. Uh, Section 436 of Criminal Procedure Code of India mandates that every prisoner under trial who has served more than half the maximum term awardable for the offence he is accused of be mandatorily released on bail. It refers to such cases where people are arrested and cases are running in courts. There are a large number of such prisoners in India. Sometimes they spend more time in jail than prescribed punishment for the offense they have committed. Section 436 is not a proper solution to under trial problem, as discretion of magistrate and court is compulsory. No rational method is prescribed there. Personal bond conduct could not be affordable by all prisoners. Lack of knowledge and law by people could result in a very less demand of application of Section 436A in real cases. Thus, more rational approach is needed. A possible solution may be to define a definite period through it may again create pathological condition of low conviction and incarceration condition in India. Number of special courts need to be increased to deal with such cases. Arrest on serious charges only should be allowed to reduce such under trial people whose human rights are violated due to it. Question number 5. The proposed Bangladesh, China, India, Myanmar BCIM economic corridor will increase connectivity in South Asia. Discuss its importance for concerned region and India. Well, the proposed Bangladesh, China, India, Myanmar economic corridor is an initiative conceptualized for significant gains through sub-regional economic cooperation within the BCIM. The multi-corridor will be the first expressway between India and China and will pass through Myanmar and Bangladesh. The proposed corridor will cover over 1.65 million square kilometers, which will be comprises of an estimated 440 million people in China's Yunnan province, Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Bihar in northern India through the combination of road, rail, water, and air linkages in the region. The interconnectedness would facilitate the cross border flow of people and goods, minimize overland trade obstacles, ensure greater market access, and increase multilateral trade. So, these are some of the benefits and the proposals in which the BCIM is being formulated. Now, let us see the answer. BCIM corridor seeks to improve connectivity and infrastructure, energy resources, agriculture and trade and investment. It will connect India's northeast, Bangladesh, Myanmar and Chinese province of Yunnan through a network of roads, railways, waterways and airways under a proper regulatory framework. Benefits for the concerned region. Increased trade will definitely lead to economic growth in the region. People to people contact will develop trust and increase in cultural exchange among them. Very important point. Then inter-regional movement of people would help in reducing border clashes and decrease animosity between neighbors. Then benefits for India. India will actively engage in collaboration and enhance ties with the member countries that will build political trust. It will promote trade and economic developments of India. The underdeveloped Northeast India will be most benefited by it, and it will help India embark on the lands connected to Southeast Asia. The project is part of revival of the old Silk Route and the new Maritime Silk Road initiative, though it is considered also as the projection of China's economy over the South Asian region. Question number 6. Intellectual property rights are the rights given to persons over the creations of their minds, but it is one of the many challenges faced by the Indian generic drug manufacturers in manufacturing affordable drugs. Comment. Before discussing the actual answer, let us discuss what is there in the background of this question. That over the past decade, there has been increasing interest of many policymakers, academics, then business and civil society organizations in understanding the economic and social impact of intellectual property rights. The growing importance of knowledge and innovation has placed in intellectual property rights under the spotlight and highlighted the need to clearly assess how intellectual property interfaces with the development in different socio-economic contexts. Then legislative reforms in the field of intellectual property rights and the modernization of the intellectual property infrastructure of many countries has raised expectations on how the IP system can be used to promote economic development. Well, there are three elements for an effective intellectual property right system. That is number one, it must provide fair and effective incentives for innovation. It must provide innovators certainly regarding their rights. Then it should offer patent holders strong enforcement tools for defending infringed patents. So, keeping all these things in mind, let us see the answer. The Indian generic companies have proved to be vital for many poor nations, including India, to help them overcome some deadly diseases, but they are finding it increasingly difficult environment to do their business. Now, see, just now we have discussed what this intellectual property system can provide. So, how now this is implemented and relevant in terms of Indian manufacturing companies of drugs? Okay, so the Food and Drug Administration of United States often misuses intellectual property rights against the Indian firms and has inspected that Indian pharmaceutical development facilities many times and given its negative reports on manufacturing practices in these facilities, which led to closure of many facilities. Then political lobbying by innovators to gain conducive of domestic and international laws such as intellectual property rights. Then relaxation in foreign direct investment in pharmaceutical sector, allowing mergers and overtake of generic manufacturers by innovators, lack of support by those medical practitioners who follow unethical practice of prescribing non-generic drugs under gratifications, lack of capital mass manufacturing to achieve ultra low cost, then behavioral inclination of general patient toward costly drugs as he associates cost with efficacy. Then high profits on brand makes pharmacists to push branded drugs in place of generic drugs. Lack of marketing and rumor market prevents the popularization of generic drugs. Question number 7. Non-governmental organizations play a vital role in the welfare of common people. Discuss how they can contribute to the development of primary education sector in India. Well, access to elementary education for 6 to 14-year-old children is now a fundamental right in India. The universalization of elementary education is carried out under Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan. It is noted that the larger number of children who are being covered under this scheme are not provided quality education to meet the desired standards. According to the recent report titled The Annual Status of Education Report, children in government run schools lack basic mathematical and language skills. That is a serious cause of concern. To improve the situation and impart quality education, government needs to actively collaborate with non-governmental organizations. Thus, the benefits would be greater accountability, teacher training, participation of stakeholders like parents in functioning of schools. NGOs can act as a link between society and the government on problems like teacher absenteeism, poor infrastructure of school. They can also work with the local government bodies to resolve such issues. Moreover, social audits of teaching quality and infrastructure can be carried out to evaluate the progress. The ultimate responsibility of universal education remains with the government, but NGOs can assist the government though They cannot substitute its initiatives. Question number 8. The Jawaharlal Nehru National Urban Renewal Mission was launched to encourage reforms and fast track planned development of identified cities. Discuss the setbacks faced by the mission. Well, let us discuss what is this scheme is all about and what were its objectives, and then we will find out why it could not fulfill the desired aims. Well, this scheme was launched on 3rd December 2005 under the Ministry of Housing and Urban Poverty Alleviation. The objective of this scheme was the integrated development of slum areas and provision of basic services to the urban poor, namely the security of tenure at affordable prices, affordable housing, water supply and sanitation, and convergence of like already existing schemes for universal services such as education, health, social security, etc. So this scheme was launched by Government of India to implement a reform-driven plan development of identified cities in a mission mode, like with the focus on efficiency in urban infrastructure or service delivery mechanism and basic services to the urban poor with community participation and accountability of urban local bodies or parastatals towards the citizens. So this was the higher objective of this scheme, but this could not fulfill the task. Let us discuss the loopholes of this scheme in the answer. See, the mission was launched as a centrally sponsored scheme, envisaged improving the civic and the economic infrastructure of cities such as transport, solid waste management, water supply, and plant development of cities, etc. It was expected to make the cities more livable with less pollution and eco-friendly conditions. However, despite many successes to its credit, it suffered through numerous setbacks. It suffered due to lack of coordination between the authorities at central and state level, which made the approval of the task delayed and filled with loads of hindrances. The central government has twin objectives of allocating the fund and its auditing. An extraordinary amount of scrutiny and control on part of Union government before releasing the fund also contributed to its failure in achieving its objectives on time. The issue of federalism was also raised by many states on account of the tight control. Well, it has started with a novel objective to bring out the development of cities to the forefront, and if suitable policy and implementation measures are taken, schemes like this can actually transform our nation. Question number 9. India has important geostrategic and economic interests in Asia Pacific region. Examine the impact of the ongoing geopolitical developments on India in that region. So before we start answering this question, let us understand what is there in the background. Well, in the emerging geopolitical discourse today, in Asia Pacific region, there has emerged a major center of geostrategic interest. The Asia Pacific ranges from East Africa to Western and Central Pacific, including Japan and Australia. There are several reasons for the ongoing importance of Asia Pacific region as a geopolitical, geoeconomic and geostrategic space today. This region is very important as these days for a growing demand for resources such as for both living and non-living, an expanding maritime trade, rising maritime boundary disputes and political tensions. This Asia Pacific incorporates some of the busiest sea lanes in the world and has important choke points. The Indian Ocean has 4 of 6 major maritime choke points and serves as a maritime superhighway for in-demand energy resources that drive the world's largest economies, and hence this makes India as a very important geostrategic and economically interested region. Okay, so this was the background of it. Let us understand the answer. The Asia Pacific going through a lot of changes in geopolitical realities. The impacts of geopolitical developments on India in that region are as follows. India has formed many multilateral partnerships with countries of that region to improve on its trade and security issues. The political instability in Myanmar, Thailand, is a matter of concern. China and Vietnam dispute over South China Sea oil exploration is another concern. China's initiative to revive the maritime Silk Route and its port development works in Pakistan, Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Sri Lanka. Even though it will promote Indian trade, it has raised a security concern for India. China Japan island conflict has put India in almost a fix. China is the biggest trading partner of India, but Japan and India had a cordial relationship. Okay. Japan is hesitant to build nuclear reactors in India due to India not being a signatory to Non-Proliferation Treaty, that is NPT. India have also the plan to build roads till Thailand, Bangladesh, China, India, Myanmar economic corridor, but this can only be made possible if political conditions are favorable. India's growing trade deficit with China, the dominant Asian economy, should be resolved by suitable means. Then only situations will be more favorable for Indian subcontinent. Question number 10. The ambitious river linking project of India is designed to ease water shortages in western and southern India while mitigating the impact of recurrent floods in eastern parts of Ganga basin. Evaluate criticisms associated with the project. Well, before answering this question, let us understand what this project is all about. The river linking project, which the National Water Development Agency calls inter-basin transfer of water, is designed to ease water shortages in western and southern India while mitigating the impact of recurrent floods in eastern parts of the Ganga basin. So, as per the National Water Development Agency, it is one of the most effective ways to increase the irrigation potential to improve food grain production, mitigate floods and droughts, and reduce regional imbalances in the availability of water in the interbasin water transfer from surplus rivers to the deficit areas. The Brahmaputra and the Ganga, particularly their northern tributaries, that is the Mahanati, the Godavari, and the west flowing rivers originating from Western Ghats, are found to be surplus in water resources. So, if they are interconnected, definitely the areas which are water driven will be benefited. On its completion, the country will have 30 river links, 3,000 storage structures, a canal network stretching almost 15,000 kilometers, and that can generate 34 uh, gigawatts of hydroelectric power. It can create some 87 million acres of irrigated land and transfer 174 trillion liters of water per year. So this is a highly dreamt of project and the most aspired one. Now let's see the pros and cons of this project after implementation. So the answer over here, the river interlinking project, a long debated panacea to address the simultaneous occurring of droughts and floods problem in India, can be analyzed by following issues. That is the pros of it. More areas can be irrigated and hence less dependence on monsoon. Then more power generation, definitely a feature. The water surplus areas would be able to send their extra water to water deficit areas and would be able to avoid floods, definitely yes. Less dependence on groundwater and hence groundwater level can be restored. Now the cons associated with this project are, it will lead to loss of marine ecology and many varieties of marine life as there will be mixing of waters. Forest areas will be submerged. Interstate dispute can arise since water resources comes under state list and development of projects on water resources comes under the union list. Hence, constitutional amendment would be required to avert future disputes. Possibility of high cost implementation of projects is there, then the future of interlinking project lies on an uncertain path and the ability of politicians and engineering acumen will only determine which way the project can be traversed. Question number 11. India has formally signed the Free Trade Agreement in Services and Investment with ASEAN. Critically evaluate the significance of the agreement for India. Well, India has signed the FTA in services and investments with ASEAN 2 years after the discussions on the pact concluded. And the services agreement will open up opportunities of movement of both manpower and investments. And some of the important articles contained in this agreement are the ones on transparency, domestic regulations, recognition, market access, national treatment, increasing participation of developing countries, joint committee on services, review, dispute settlement, and denial of benefits, etc. So, considering the consequences of FTA in goods with ASEAN, it is not safe to predict that FTA in services and investments is certainly beneficial for India. How far it will contribute in the growth in the Indian economy, that will be revealed in the future. Studies have shown that FTA preference utilizing rates estimated by shares of export value enjoying preferences is low in Asia. This implies that although a number of FTAs have been concluded in the region, in reality they are underutilized. Then another potential problem with ASEAN FTAs is suboptimal level of liberalization in agricultural products. The Asian countries have comparative advantages in machinery and appliances sector, which can hamper the Indian machinery sector too. Lokpal is a legal representative having jurisdiction over all members of the parliament and central government employees in cases of corruption in India. Critically comment on the procedure involved in selection and appointment of Lokpal. The Lokpal and Lokayukta Act 2011 clearly provides for the selection procedure for Lokpal. The selection committee consists of the Prime Minister as the chairperson, Chief Justice of India or Supreme Court judge selected by the CJI, Speaker of the Lok Sabha, Leader of Opposition in the Lok Sabha, and eminent jurist chosen by the chairperson. So these will be the committee members. The selection committee has majority of government members. It may lead government partiality in appointments. Okay, this is one of the drawbacks. The selection committee may appoint a screening committee to recommend names from diverse fields. The screening committee would consist of at least 7 members with 50% from scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, other backward classes, women or minority. Okay. Then, however, the selection committee may consider other persons than recommended. This would make screening committee mere advisory. Hence, many distinguished personnel are reluctant to be made members of the committee. Recent resignation and refusal of certain people to be part of the committee is a case in point. So, due to the importance of Lokpal and democratic system, its appointment should be as impartial and objective as possible. The institution is in place and it all depends on how people act in it. Question number 13. Students from India are increasingly choosing abroad for higher studies. Discuss the reasons for this change and its implication on India. Well, there are no doubt that many reasons why Indians are choosing to study abroad, and two of these factors are troubling for India's universities and for the high tech economy. When bright students look around India for a place to study for an advanced degree, they find few top quality programs. In the social sciences and humanities specifically, there are a small number of respectable departments, but absolutely none that are considered by international experts as in the top class of academic programs. In the hard sciences, biotechnology, and related fields, the situation is more favorable with a few institutions such as IITs, the AIMS, and TIFR, and IIC, Bangalore, etc. Not only are overseas programs and departments mere prestigious, they also have far better facilities, laboratories, and a more favorable culture of research. Top faculty members are often more accessible, and it is easier to become affiliated with a laboratory or or an institute. Academic politics exist everywhere, and Indians may suffer from occasional discrimination abroad, but overall academic conditions are likely to be better than at home. So, considering all these factors, students prefer pursuing their high esteemed career abroad. So let's see the pros and cons and the implications. Well, the answer begins like this. Indian students are choosing abroad as study destination because of following reasons: better research opportunities and a wide range of fields available to choose from, then cheap and flexible loan facilities, as it has made financially viable to study abroad, then opportunity to learn from diverse culture across the world. Most of the top universities in the world are located abroad. An assumption: follow the herd. That is also one of the mentality among the youth of better opportunities abroad. And the implications of this is loss of talented people due to brain drain, inhibits advancement of science and tech in our country, economic loss as large sum of money is already spent in their education before they migrate. The otherwise pressure to reform higher education that can be generated with their stay is also hampered. Then students are ambassadors of Indian culture, aiding in soft power diplomacy, right? Then the students who stay abroad are source of valuable remittances. Question number 14. Land border agreement between India and Bangladesh may be a positive step of India towards resolving its border disputes with neighboring countries. Comment on it. Well, land border agreement between India and Bangladesh is a long stalled piece of legislation related to the exchange of enclaves. Though it was signed in 1972 and it ratified by Bangladesh in 1974, but the 119th Constitutional Amendment Bill concerned with the agreement is still waiting for the approval in the Indian Parliament. It aims to exchange 111 Indian enclaves and 57 Bangladesh enclaves in each other's territories. As a result, there will be a net loss of territory to India. This is the major cause of opposition. The agreement, together with the apprehensions of rise in secessionist tendency. The benefits of this agreement are as follows. First of all, it will improve bilateral relations between both the countries because it is being presented as a win-win situation for both the nations, and India is expected to ratify it without delay. Then, effective gain of territory. Then, residents will get clear national identity. Government services can be extended properly to citizens. It will remove the unnecessary skirmishes at border, then clear demarcation of border to check the problem of illegal migrants of Bangladesh that creates security issues in northeastern states of India. Question number 15. On which grounds did India refuse to join NPT, that is Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty? Examine the importance of civil nuclear deals that India has signed with various countries. The answer is as follows. The Non-Proliferation Treaty came into existence in 1970s to stop the race for acquiring nuclear weapons by various countries. But India did not join the treaty due to following reasons. India contends that it is a flawed treaty because it gives the right to have nuclear weapons to only 5 nations, rest being prevented from having them. Even the 5 nations who are nuclear states, as per the treaty, have not shown any intentions of reducing the stockpile of nuclear weapons. With China and Pakistan possessing them, it became essential for India to have a nuclear deterrent. India has never disagreed with the spirit of non-proliferation. It has put its nuclear installation under International Atomic Energy Agency safeguards. Its no first use policy shows that its commitment to use the nuclear energy peacefully. The importance of recently signed civil nuclear deals can be discussed as follows. The civil nuclear deals will help India to secure continuous supply of uranium for its civil nuclear usage for power production. India will be able to get critical technologies which were banned previously, and these deals will have made it easier for India to enter into nuclear supplier group. Question number 16. The Program Evaluation Organization was established under the guidance and direction of the Planning Commission of India with a specific task of evaluating the community development programs and other intensive area development schemes. Discuss the structure and functions of the organization. The Program Evaluation Office was started in 1952 under Planning Commission to evaluate the ongoing programs. It is a three-tier body with head office at Planning Commission along with 7 regional offices and 8 project evaluation offices. Officer of the rank of director or deputy advisor heads each office. Someone of the rank of senior research officer holds the project evaluation office. And the functions of this PEO is as follows. It undertakes evaluation of selected programs and schemes under implementation as per the requirement of the various divisions of Planning Commission and ministries and departments of the government. The objectives of evaluation includes assessment of process and impact of development programs, identifying the areas of success and failure at different stages of administration and its execution, analysis of regions for success or failure, then examining people's reactions and deriving lessons for future improvement in the formulation and implementation of new programs and schemes. Question number 17. The Uniform Civil Code essentially means unifying all personal laws to have one set of common laws dealing with all aspects that apply to all citizens, irrespective of the community they belong to. Comment on the need of Uniform Civil Code in India. Well, the Uniform Civil Code is a common set of personal laws such as marriage, divorce, maintenance, succession and adoption, etc. for all citizens across religion, caste and ethnicity. It is mentioned in Article 44 of the Constitution. It should be fundamental in the governance of the country. So the existing personal laws are based on religious scriptures and contain an element of gender injustice too. Indian society is passing through a phase of rapid urbanization and modernization. The resulting migration, economic and social mobility have intensified multicultural intercommunity interaction such as marriage, adoption, divorce, etc. But traditional laws cannot accommodate these emerging realities. Special Marriage Act addresses some of these concerns but not all. A rational and modern uniform civil code will promote communal harmony and national integration. This will blur the social barrier among various communities, including the selected tribal group. But all this cannot be imposed. The fear of various communities, real or imaginary, needs to be allayed. The apprehension that Uniform Civil Code will repeal the traditional laws and that is an attack and interference on personality matters by state should be put to rest. Question number 18. The Essential Commodities Act 1955 was enacted by Government of India to ensure the interest of common people. Discuss various objectives of the Act. Well, Essential Commodities Act 1955 was enacted to ensure the easy availability of essential commodities to the consumer and to protect them from exploitation by unscrupulous traders. The Act provides for the regulation and control of production, distribution and pricing of commodities which are declared as essential for maintaining or increasing supplies or for securing their equitable distribution and availability at fair prices. So keeping these things in mind, let us see the answer. Essential Commodities Act was enacted by the Government of India, but it is implemented by the state governments. Its main objectives are to regulate the production, to maintain or increase the supply, and the price control. To fulfill the above objectives, it regulates production, supply, and distribution of commodities listed under Essential Commodities Act. Furthermore, it may also impose license norms to control production. It can cap the storage limit and regulate the price itself. It uh, and in the recent measures taken by the Indian government, It includes onion and potato in the essential commodities list to check the volatility of their prices. This is one of the examples to name so. Question number 19. Critically examine how does the proposed uh, Prevention of Communal Violence, Access to Justice and Reparations Bill 2014 violate the spirit of federalism? Well, Communal Violence, Access to Justice and Reparations Bill 2014 is aimed to provide the central government an authority to intervene and act during communal violence in any part of India with consent and cooperation of state. Many critics term it against the spirit of federalism, which provides a respective state to decide and regulate upon items under a state subject, including law and order issue. Communal violence is a law and order issue which comes under state subject, and the central government cannot legislate on state subjects. So it should be noticed that riots, especially communal, stirs the political and communal sentiments of whole nation, define the state and federal boundaries. Spill effects of ethnic and communal violence to other states is a common phenomenon. In those crises hours, a multi-state and multi-pronged approach is needed to curb it. This bill will be a right step in that regard, with investing the power with center to take immediate and comprehensive action, of course, with state consent. Question number 20. The Chief Justice of India holds the highest judicial position in India. Should his appointment be based on seniority alone? Well, appointment of the Chief Justice of India is based on seniority as per the established convention. So, the senior most judge is appointed as the CJI. The convention is to avoid any undue pressure on Supreme Court judges to carry favors for appointment as CJI. Such system prevents political bias on the part of judges so that they can act without any pressure. However, such a system also has flaws. Like sometimes a senior most judge, when appointed as CJI, do not have enough tenure left so as to instill change in the system and lead the apex court in a proper way. For proper and efficient working of apex court, CJI should have a minimum fixed tenure. If a judge does not have such minimum tenure, then he or she should be bypassed for the want of continuity and efficiency on part of the CJI. A stable, fixed term would ensure a better and continuous approach to deal with it. It shall be like it'll bring a clear vision and streamlined framework without any further changes into it. Therefore, seniority should not be the sole criterion. Rather, length of service of CGI should be given primacy and later can complement it. An accountable, transparent system should be. Question number 21. Briefly discuss the UN Convention on the Law of Sea, which enshrines the notion that all problems of ocean space are closely interrelated, and need to be addressed as a whole. Examine its relevance in Indian perspective. Well, UN Convention on Sea Laws, they were made into a comprehensive legal framework to regulate all ocean space it uses and the resources which are present there. It contains, among other things, provisions relating to territorial sea, the contagious zone, the continental shelf, the exclusive economic zone, and the high seas. It also provides for protection and preservation of marine environment, for marine scientific research, and for the development and transfer of marine technology. Well, UN Convention on the Law of Seas came into force in 1994, and it defines the rights and responsibilities of nations with respect to the use of maritime natural resources. It has six major zones like internal waters, territorial waters, contagious zone, maritime cultural zone, and exclusive economic zone, as well as the continental shelf. India does not have major maritime conflicts with its neighbors relating to the demarcation of boundaries, but one particular issue with Bangladesh in Bay of Bengal is there. So recently, the Permanent Court of Arbitration at Hague decided to provide three-step analysis for dividing the continental shelf and exclusive economic zone in the concerned case. The decision is related to inner continental shelf and exclusive economic zone. But in case of outer continental shelf, which extends beyond 200 nautical miles, there are separate provisions under UNCLOS. It states that such claims must be submitted to Commission on Limits of the continental shelf, which is entitled to give the final award. One such claim regarding India and Bangladesh is pending before CLCS. But the Permanent Court of Arbitration has delimited these territories also in its award, which may create some issue if the award of CLCS comes different from what is presently awarded. So the historic Indo-Bangladesh Maritime Delimitation Award makes the beginning in the resolution of a long-standing problem. Question number 22. There is positive relationship between the quality of institutions and governance structure and economic growth discussed. Well, governance refers to the interaction between government and other factors of social sphere and the process of decision making in a complex world. So good governance has certain characteristics such as accountability, transparency, responsibility, equality and inclusion, effectiveness and efficiency, participation and consensus orientation. All these traits have been a bearing on economic aspect of the nation. A decisive institutional mechanism allows for faster decision making. A transparent and accountable system leads to efficient and effective means of doing things. And an inclusive way of governance leads to equitable growth. A sound legal framework gives the stakeholders confidence to pursue economic activities. An efficient institutional structure results in lesser costs and save time. Conditions for economic growth. Now, new innovative ways of governance such as single window clearance, citizens charter, social audits, periodic and independent evaluation have a positive effect on economic growth. Many people aware of what to expect and demand have simplified procedures of business leading to increased competition. But the governance which breeds corruption, inefficiency, and red tapeism has a detrimental effect on economic growth. Nepotism, bribery reduces competition, leads to skewed growth and accumulation of wealth. Question number 23. Critically analyze the provisions of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Bill 2014, which has been introduced for the empowerment of persons with disabilities. Well, the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Bill 2014 repeals the Persons with Disabilities Act 1995. This bill states that persons with disabilities shall have the right to equality and shall not be discriminated against on grounds of their disability. And rights of disabled persons include protection from inhuman treatment and equal protection and safety in situations of risk, armed conflict, humanitarian emergencies, and natural disasters. All existing public belongings shall be made accessible for disabled persons within 5 years of the regulations being formulated by the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities as per the new bill which is being introduced. So let's in this background let's have the answer. Rights of person with disability bill has been designed to facilitate certain rights to person with disabilities. This bill increases number of benchmark disabilities from 7 to 19, but in current times new type of disabilities are recognized which in the long run will be excluded. And 5% reservation in government jobs and higher educational institutions has been provided, whereas on the other hand the present reservation of 3% in government jobs has not been utilized fully. Reservation should also be extended to private sector. That is one of the recommendations. Incentivize the private sector for making their place accessible and promoting employment of disabled and also sensitizing staff members. There is need to promote accessible accommodation for them. There is need to create national commission for persons with disabilities on the line of other similar commissions catering to certain section of population. The bill continues the medical model that consider the disabilities more in medical terms. However, it has been proven worldwide that disabilities is more related to social disability. Question number 24. Does the creation of quasi-judicial bodies or tribunals encroach upon the power of judiciary and the principle of separation of powers discussed? Well, separation of power is a basic structure of Indian constitution. This doctrine faces challenge from Article 323B of the constitution that allows executive to address specific litigations by appointing tribunals. Hence, the withering of separation doctrine is often raised in various quarters. Need for tribunals, highly specialized cases like tax disputes require expertise in particular domain. Courts often lack in these expertise. Pendency and dispute resolution of courts is highly delayed. Constitution itself allows executives to establish tribunals. Issues that challenge the doctrine of separation of power are executives rather than judges often head tribunals. This bypass judiciary, which is a vital check on executive, and executives becoming judges of their own cause will be against the fundamental principle of justice. So, following major measures can be taken for a balanced proceeding, equal representation of executives and judiciary in tribunals. Experts such as amicus curiae may be appointed to aid judges in specialized matters. Erosion of appellate powers of high courts and Supreme Court should be reframed from. These check and balances will help destroy a healthy relationship between executives and judiciary and will guard separation of power from. Though Supreme Courts of India and United States of America are competent enough for judicial review in their respective jurisdictions, but there are significant differences in their powers of judicial review discussed. Judicial review is a doctrine under which legislative and executive actions are subject to review by the judiciary. The doctrine varies from between jurisdictions, so the procedure and scope of judicial review may differ between and within countries. The power of judicial review is now nowhere mentioned in the Constitution of the United States, whereas it mentioned in the Article 13 and 32 of the Indian Constitution. The Indian Constitution has borrowed it from the Constitution of the United States of America. So the US only federal laws can be reviewed, but in India both state as well as central laws can be reviewed. In United States, judicial review is circumscribed by due process of law, whereas India has instead specified this procedure established by law under Article 21 of the Constitution. But in India, the Supreme Court in the case of Maneka Gandhi versus Union of India made a liberal interpretation. It has tried to make the term procedure established by law as synonymous with the due process when it comes to protect individual rights.